Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to one and all gathered here. The next 1 hour is going to be meaningful moments with a deep insights, thoughts, concerns on the importance of critical, compassionate pedagogy. So, critical, compassionate pedagogy is an educational approach that combines critical pedagogy and compassionate practices. It aims to empower students to critically analyze and challenge social injustices while fostering empathy, care, and understanding for others. So this pedagogical approach recognizes that students' emotional well-being and sense of compassion are essential for social transformation and creating a more just society. Our speakers, Senthil and Ramesh, are extraordinary people with a great vision and passion, not only for teaching, but on the whole society. Such a wonderful souls. I take great privilege in introducing them. Senthil holds a bachelor's degree in electronics and has amassed 15 years of experience working in the development of desktop and server processors. However, his journey took an interesting turn when he pursued further education on psychology and a B.Ed in special education. He has worked as a teacher in a Waldorf school for about 5 years, currently teaching math for 2 years at Marudam Farm School, worked with APF and few other rural schools as math trainer for teachers. With a diverse background encompassing both technical expertise and a deep understanding of education and psychology, Senthil brings a unique perspective to the session. And about Ramesh, Ramesh is an alumnus of IIM Lucknow, bringing a wealth of knowledge and expertise to our discussions. Ramesh has dedicated himself to helping children develop an intuition for mathematics, driven by his passion for the subject. His unique perspective and approach will complement Senthil's insights, creating a dynamic and enriching session for all participants. So over to Senthil and Ramesh. The next 1 hour, we're all awaiting. Thank you.
Senthil, all yours. You can start.
Okay. I think I might be a little bit noisy because of the traffic very next door to my window. So bear with me. If it is too disturbing, just let me know. Is it okay? How does it sound? It's fairly okay?
Only when the honk comes, it's a bit noisy. Otherwise,
Okay.
it's okay. We are hearing some honks once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's on the
like right now.
Yeah.
At
But
times, not much.
I'll see. Okay, if that's just mild and manageable, I'll keep going without shifting the places as of now. So I would say that though my teaching experience is not a lot, but what has happened to me is I've had the opportunity to talk to many mentors and a lot of students. And over time, especially in the last few years, I've had a lot of children come and share with me like the way where I make mistakes, where others make mistakes, and what are all the things which we should be careful about, and how teachers could create safe spaces. I've been having these dialogues. So whatever I speak now may not be something I have been doing already, but more like I wish I would also do these things. So don't consider as if like I've expertised all these things, and so there is enough and more learning for me as well. So in that aspect, like why this even critical and compassionate pedagogy, like why should I take this topic? And because we all know that the teachers have to be compassionate, there's no doubt about it. But sometimes I also wonder, what does compassionate mean? Like, do we allow everything what the child asks for and happily without being, is putting a boundary to a child? Is it compassionate? Is it non-compassionate? What is it? So some of these confusions, because of late when parents and teachers have been using hard measures, by the time, like, what is a compassionate measure? And even when of late we have heard this thing about someone scolding some chemistry teacher scolded a girl, and then girl sort of suicided. So how do we look at these things? What is compassionate? And compassionate, is it like, and how just not compassionate, but following the line has been a norm for a long time, and especially in the schools, where discipline is something which we expect. And when we are very expecting a disciplined classroom, we ourselves are also disciplined to the orders coming from above. And in that aspect, how can, are we critical about the status quo? Are we conscious about the questions we ask? And can we encourage children to ask similar things? These are the broader understanding about, because when we take about the NCF 2005 or anything else, like all we come to know is like how to bring a holistic child through education from 6 to 16 years. So what does holistic mean? Like, should they just be a clerical assistant to do the job, or do they have to choose their own decisions in the life? All these things are choices which we as teachers, are we having these choices? Are we aware about these choices about shaping children? And children will shape themselves, but are we aware about what are we stepping into? And those are the things. So in that aspect, I have some musings written down and some thoughts, quite random, but also from some of these things are recently inspired from various places. So I've collected these things. Let's see how this goes. And Ramesh, cut me anytime you feel like. So one is, how do we look at creating memory itself? Say some of these things, just like the song Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, how did these things get into our memory? Like, certain things have by repetition, mere repetition, it's happening every day. We are singing this, we are singing it as a group, just happens. And maybe the other way of our memory get registered is something very shocking happens, or some strong thing registered into the memory. There is a exciting moment, a thrilling thing, and just that adrenaline is so much high in that moment that you get something registered in the memory. So while being in the class also, can we create that kind of a wow moment? Say there is a pattern to numbers, say 1, 3, 5. What would be the next one? And what would be the next one? What would be the fifth one from now? We are not talking about arithmetic progression, but we are looking at these patterns in grade 1, in grade 2. And children are standing in a circle. We are just going to clap at 8. And then another 8, someone else will clap. And another 8, someone else is going to clap. If a child is going to calculate as he or she is clapping, and then when will my next clap comes, and this is the number, and if the same number comes, there is a wow moment. And that wow moment, can it be facilitated in the class? So the first thing what I feel is, how do we consciously create or curate these wow moments for children to discover something for them? Some things has to be curated for the specific personal wow moments based on their intellectual or mathematical ability in that moment, in that year. So can we create these wow moments? Say at least every child should have once in 2 weeks or once in a week, that they should have it as if a personal goal for them, and it's a goal for the teachers to curate. And at least some of these things, say a fraction, unlike denominators, fractions of unlike denominators have to be added. How do we add this? How do we multiply a fraction? So how do we divide a fraction? Can the class collectively discover something like We have to flip and multiply. That's when the answer is going to come. But that's not something we say. We just lead them as an exploration from whole number to a fraction, and then fraction to a fraction, slowly dividing two different fractions, and children discover that here's a formula, here's a trick to it. And when that trick comes, call it one of your child's trick itself. And that is leading to a group discovery, a class discovery. That's probably the second one. And this third thing is all very important for me of late. Like, I get these things from various we get ideas from YouTube links, we see others' classrooms, we read something, and then it is suddenly so enticing that I feel like I want to bring it to the class. Or someone else is suggesting you that, why don't you take this idea to the class? I've seen this in one of the pedagogy meetings, or they have some varied games, but I don't know if it'll work for my class. I don't know the mood of the class or something. I'm not so sure, doubtful. This is what Ramesh said. This is what Mama said. And then, like, can it work? The thing is, if we are doubtful, I think we have to really practice more within ourselves, within our friends, and then ensure that it really works, make it our own thing. And then only it will transform in the class. It might look very silly, very small, but if it is mine, it will just work in the class. That's the biggest thing. This is something which I heard from a podcast by Ruth Wilson Gilmore, and she's an African American activist, and she was talking about how in her childhood, her father used to ask her, "What did you learn today?" And then if she talks about, say, a solar system, and then he would ask a question like, "Why do you think the seasons change?" And the answer, whatever she says, she cannot go back and say. If he asks why, she cannot say because the teacher said so. If he would come back and say, if you say that the teacher said so, it just means that you haven't understood it fully. So we could read Krishnamurti's quotes or Rudolf Steiner's quotes, so many things, Montessori's quotes, but the thing is, this is what they say. This is what it's written in Montessori's book. This is what is written in J. Krishnamurti's book. Then it means that you're still holding on to their personality to support your idea. It has not become our idea. That's what Ruth Wilson Gilmore says, that can you make it your own idea? If you don't know what does it mean, you will have to go back and ask the teacher again, but you will not come back and tell me because the teacher said so. I thought that was a powerful message. So in a way, we are also taking agency for our own knowledge. We are not saying this is something I learned from them, but are you convinced after learning from them? That is more important. I'm not so sure, but this is what they say is not good enough. It's still not your internalized thing. What happens is when we internalize something else in our mind, and then like we lend these ideas, then it is not ours. So we have to allow some of our internalized things to also unlearn, to allow something to be learned. That is very important. And
so,
next is,
Senthil,
yes.
if I could interrupt, here the idea is to not let the child justify anything as something which the teacher has told.
Yes. Yes, in a way, it's like, it's not that in younger years, at least till third standard, the teacher looks like a god for them. And they would just say, oh, my teacher told me I have to just eat only in my right hand, even though the child was eating in left hand. That's how they take it. But can we also look at children from a varied angle? Like, I'm not just talking about till third grade, but talking till maybe eighth grade, till 12th grade also. So it's more so for us also in a way that, can we look at, if children say, if we ask a question and then they say an answer, if we ask why, because you said so, that's not the right answer. That's very problematic. Yeah. Is that sounds okay? Or?
Yeah, it does. But just a thought was that generally in the lower ages of
Yes.
schooling, the pedagogy is directed towards seeking compliance from a child.
Yeah.
So this puts a child in a different gear of beginning an intense round of questioning, challenging, and somewhere also having rebellion thoughts contrary to what is being taught or told or sought compliance on. So how does that work in a classroom setup with multiple children and a single teacher trying to buy in compliance?
No, I don't know if compliance is something which we should achieve for. I think the more some of the classes, what I've observed is where it seems an outwardly like you enter the class and then you see the class is like extremely compliant. Uh, it could be for two reasons. One is the teacher is threatening, or the other is the teacher is actually handling in a way that she or he is not striving for compliance. It just automatically be in place because it's so inward that compliance. Sometimes the outward compliance may not transfer into an inward compliance. So I would say we create safe spaces for the children is much more important, and compliance is also very much subjective, right? Like outward compliance could be like just a silent class, orderly class, that they can't turn back and talk. All these are not compliant, but if they are focused in the work they are doing, say if there is a math activity and a child says, oh, I really want to do with all three children together and we all can sit together. And if we allow them to sit together and then do it, and if they are noisy but still engaged in math activity, I feel they are very much compliant. So in that aspect, say if there are some of the answers we write on the board, and then you call a child to say a right question to that answer and then erase the answer from the board. Say there is 12 written on the board. There are various numbers we write on the board, and then we would ask, this is one activity which I could talk for, say, grade 2 or grade 3. So if there is 22 on the board, you can ask the children to, you pose a question which can have multiplication or division. And then somebody could just say 22 times 1. That's still okay. That's the right question for that. Somebody would say like, yeah, 44 divided by 2 or 11 times 2. All these are nice questions, but questioning can happen in various ways. Like we can encourage children to question in different ways. It does not necessarily be very critical about the teacher at the start, but it should be the question. Our aim is, can the children grow up into an adult to question a status quo which is happening outside just because of our internalizing things, just because of certain stereotypes and prejudices? Can they question a certain prejudice while it is happening? Can it happen slowly? And what could be the ways in which we can create this criticality in them? And what would be one of them? So, if 5 is an answer to two different questions, 2 plus 3 or 1 plus 4 or 6 minus 1, all these are different questions. These are different perspectives. These are from different places you look at 5. So can we also see it as there could be facts? The facts are facts. Facts are like 5. But the thing is, from where do you look at that 5 from? You could see different lenses, different perspectives. And how do we hold this? How do we hold respect for the other questions also and hold our questions? I think those are the things which we can deal with and need to dwell with. But compliance is something which that is a very important topic in altogether. Can we all look at what is compliance and what are we looking for as compliance? Yeah.
Yeah, Senthil, if I can just,
Thank you.
if I can just quickly add a point to Pranav. See, Pranav, when we are a school teacher of the young children, there is a natural hierarchy which is set in because we are older than the children. And we have to be very, very careful because they are going to believe everything we say. Okay. So, but we know that we don't know everything. So how do we ensure that the children are feeling comfortable with the idea that we don't know everything, A, and B, they have to really think for themselves. We are just going to be there for them for a brief period of time of 8, 10, 12, 15 years. After that, it is their life. So unless they bring their own development of critical thinking faculty and independent thought process and ability to question things as they are going. The other day, somebody was saying, the fork has to be in the left and the knife has to be on the right. Okay. I said, why? Okay. And they said, no, that is how it is given. So what I'm basically hearing as an answer is that's what my teacher told me. That is what Senthil is saying, right? So if everybody says this is what my teacher, so over a period of time, we have forgotten the teacher, but we continue to take that bias forward. And then later, I said, then I was thinking about it. And I realized if you're a right-hander, and the knife is a much more complex tool to handle as compared to the fork, which you just have to pick, whereas the knife is something, so you use a cutting hand. And if I'm a left-hander, my knife should be on the left and the fork on the right. So now what I've done is I've constructed the logic and I own that. So now holding if somebody now says, keep your fork on the left, that's perfectly fine with me anymore, because that ownership of that particular idea is mine. I think that's the core point which Senthil is trying to get to. It is not about, so because we have to be, particularly at a young age, when children will listen to anything we say, because we are truly like gods for them. I mean, and everything we say is a gospel truth in that sense. And therefore, we have to be very, very careful in terms of we are ensuring that they're able to question, and we provide that environment for them to question. And when they question, we should not feel judged, because some of the questions they will ask it very bluntly, right? Children being children, they will ask it in a way they can ask it. And we should be also comfortable with the idea of being questioned on small things. Yeah, that's, I think.
I myself am a left-hander, so thank you for that.
Ditto. I use my fork on the right hand. I use my knife on the left hand because I use my left. Yeah.
Okay.
But then,
I think,
I can tell you this one also. I play cricket with my right hand because there were two guys in my street in Trichy. Okay, both of them were playing district, and they told me when I was young, I was a left-hander. They told me in the Indian team, you can only be allowed to bat if you're a right-hander. I converted the whole thing to a right hand. Believe it or not, it's a true story. I converted from a left-hander to a right. Even today, I bat with my right hand, thinking at that time, I was thinking that I can only get into the Indian team, which I couldn't have anyway. I barely made it to the district. But then I was told that if you're a left-hander, you're not allowed to play in a national team. They also didn't know. It was not like they were cheating or something like that. Yeah.
That's a second high five. Same with me. Bowling stays on left, batting is right. Yeah. And I think IML is the third commonality also that we share. But yeah, anyway, to Senthil, thank you for this clarification.
Yeah, I think next time when someone asks you to put the fork on the left side, you should just nod to them and say, "Yeah, you're right. I'm right-handed." Yeah. Yeah, I think the next thing what I hear from, because when I was about to come to this session, I usually haven't done any session like this. So I spoke to many teachers in my school to understand that I started observing classes, some of the classes, and especially this physical education is something fascinating because there are two reasons for it. One is definitely you can see whether whatever you teach, say you're teaching a long jump or a jump with certain thing, and here is you can set the target and then you see how they are jumping. It's instantaneous. You can see it physically. Is there something wrong? Not. As a teacher, you get to know where they are. Like you can look at everyone in the class and then you can see what is happening. And you can also say, okay, something like I would say a karate or something like that, some physical, some jiu-jitsu or something. So in this game, you push and then the other person is also sort of allowing the push and then trying to push you back. And then now you sort of know the pressure from which what you're giving, what you're receiving. It is quite instantaneous and you have to make changes accordingly. These kind of instantaneous games will be so much helpful for the learning because the assessment is happening in the moment. It's not like formative assessments, which happens week on week, and then we do a summative assessment at the end of the year. So in that aspect, I was looking at what could be this kind of instantaneous feedback system comes into, how could it be if it was in, say, a science classroom or a math classroom or anything like that. And say counting up to 100 is something I see fascinating, because if we could play the game, we could clearly see I need to crack that 89 or something like that. And how do I, what number should I say, so that what could be his next number, what could be my next number? I have to be on the toes to really know how do I gauge and then move on. So play a lot of instantaneous games where it's a two-player game or a group playing game, but I have that the either the final target can be extended or something like that. I'm not so sure about any games, but anything like a low floor, high ceiling also. It could be instantaneous. Can we have it? Can we? It's the game should not be dead. That's what I'm saying. So if I, you can say, if I, this is something I start as an energizer in the class. I clap something in a pattern, and then I would have the class repeat the pattern. So split the class into 3 different groups, and then each group is practicing something. And then now you allow the children to give you some pattern, so that they are also looking for how should I challenge the class? And suddenly somebody else is giving, and you can do it in a loop also, where one is passing to the other is passing to the other. So now you know whether your question has or the instruction has been clarified well by the way they are playing. So here is a comprehension of your instruction, the way they are converting that into their bodily activity. So have something like that. So instantaneous feedback activities would really help us to know where we are, and us to also know where we have the children with. That's one thing. And the other is, we need children to have, definitely also we should have perseverance on something what we do. And can we also have a reflective idea of, are we going the right direction or not? So something about this. Sometimes we may not even have a clue about, are we in the right direction or not, but it's okay. Shall we leave some trail back so that we can go back to the path? So here are 2 things. I'm talking about perseverance and are we on the right track? So do a lot of puzzles with the class itself. Can you do some puzzles which can actually be surprising for you? Don't do a puzzle which you have done already at home and pretend in front of children. I'm not asking about that. I'm saying take a puzzle book along with children, read it, and break your head with them. And let them have them see you, how you work with the puzzle. How long can you persevere to get the answer? Even if you are not getting the answer, that's fine. Like, are you in that zone to understand, unravel something? Can the children experience that? That has immense value, I guess. And even if you don't get it, if you are just with the puzzle for a long time and then say, okay, let all of us do at home and then come back, I'm sure one of the children will come back the next day, or many will come back and say, oh, I was playing the same, I was trying the puzzle with my father, with my mother, and this is what the answer I got. I think that is so immense. It's just powerful, because we are teaching what learning is. Like, how do we unravel a puzzle? That's something very valuable. And in a class, a senior teacher in our school, he was mentioning yesterday as I was talking to him that no judgment, no offense, but some of the great teachers could get addicted because they know that they are great, and they could talk a lot with their intellectuality, their knowledge, and keep sharing. And the whole class could be in an awestruck moment of listening to this great teacher. But he said, I know this teacher is great, but how am I sure that the children are learning a lot? The teacher might keep giving a lot of lecture, but he said, if in a class the teacher talks less and the children talk more, there could be a lot more learning than it is one-sided. So I felt that's just brilliant, because as a teacher, less we teach, the more children learn also. It is also something like when a child is probably 1 year or 1.5 years as a baby, and the grandmother gives a snap like that, and the baby turns in the right direction and looks at the grandmother, and the grandmother knows that, yeah, the child is able to identify the distance from where it's coming, the side from where it's coming, the baby is turning around. There is a lot of learning. The child is trying to walk, trying to run, and all these things. But the learning delays or slows down or sort of stops when the teaching takes over. Or so, can the learning be alive, or can the class be facilitated in a lot of learning together? Because teaching is not learning. Teaching is one activity, but can we learn together? Can we create a moment in the class, or a phenomenon in the class where every one of us is learning together? And the teacher talking less would have the children learning more. And does it mean that we should never talk? No, it's not that. We need to find the optimal balance of what we should do and what not, and have children consolidate what we have taught, have it listen from children's words, what was it for the day. And this is something we do. When I was in my first grade as a teacher, if I say a homework, or if I don't write it on the board and then say it as a homework, then, or something like some activity, if there are 20 children in the class, I literally had to repeat it 20 times. Because when someone is putting a hand up, they also put something to their ears that, oh, the teacher didn't listen, is waiting for me to ask the question. So the child is not listening to others' question. It could be the same question. So they would just put the hands up, and then they would ask the same question again, even that was repeated. So in those moments, can we allow the children to repeat the activity so that it goes deeper and deeper into them, so that they could learn a lot? And one other thing is, when someone is continuously succeeding in something, what does it mean? I learned that it is because the person is not getting out of the comfort zone. It's when someone is continuously succeeding, it's not really good for him, and that is not building the person's learning capacity. If it's just like you're on a, we go to this hill trek almost weekly once, and every time, so if you can jump from one rock to the other, can you jump next time a little further to actually push your limit? And I know that it will be a little risky, but only when you risk to something which is beyond your capacity, that's where the learning moment happens. But the thing is, it's also very crucial that you fail in that moment, you would learn better. You will be actually stretching your capacity. It could be your physical muscle or your intellectual muscle or something like that. You are actually pushing your limit. But we have to be very careful that we can't push it so hard that the muscle really breaks and then you're going into some sort of fatigue or fracture. So can we be conscious about need for pushing the limit? And this limit or the capacity is different for each child. And can we know that and push it accordingly? For someone running a sprint and then slowing down and then again running a sprint and slowing down could be an activity. For someone even stepping from a stairs, like 2 stairs up to just jumping down could be an activity. But can we push their limit? Can we push their limit consciously? That is one thing.
At this juncture, would you like to give some input on the ideal class size? Because the contribution and engagement from children becomes a function of the class size too, and the dynamics change with changing numbers. From both perspectives, teacher contributing and inviting multiple contributions and learning, and also the way children learn and share in group setups of different size, because it also builds a size pressure on the child actively engaging in learning sharing processes. So can you talk some numbers about class size?
Oh, I think it is definitely depended on the class also. But say when I say depending on the class, what do I mean? It is about is the because I've been in 3 different schools where 2 schools have mixed age group and 1 school had a age-wise classrooms. And in these different cases, I would say if it is a mixed age, every way has pros and cons. And mixed age group, I would say if there are around 20 children in a class, within a mixed age group, it's difficult for one teacher to handle. If there are support teachers in the class, if there are co-teachers, then it's handled better. If it is similar age group, then the numbers can go a little high. So 20, 25, yeah, max, I would say. But there are teachers who are handling it great for 30 numbers also. The class size going high as the grade goes higher is definitely doable. There is no doubt on that. Children above puberty, like about 12 years of age, the class size can be big and you can still have the class participate well. Or you can have one-on-ones, small groups, because suddenly you don't have the risk of a class management. You don't need to have your class completely plugged in all the moments or something like that. But when the class is young, you need more teachers and less children. That would be really fantastic. But as the class goes higher, yeah, this is something I would say really not an expert, only with my experience I'm talking. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the next is in grades 7, 8, they also learn about in biology about the blood group and what composes a certain group of blood, say A positive, O positive, A negative, or something like that. And with that in perspective, so you start talking about what's my blood group, what's my father's blood group, what's the blood group of family, does it have some relation in that? And similarly, as we talk about these things, can we also bring the social element to this whole things? Like when a particular caste person is meeting with an accident and then he would need blood. So where would he look at the blood from? So we go to his own caste and then find the blood, or we have to match the blood group. So if that, and have engagement with children on various things, and also ask this question about like how are we still divided on the caste, where we have to really look at we all are equal, and some of us are just divided based on the blood group, and that doesn't change our character. So wherever possible, can we mix these subjects instead of just boxing it? Like math should just be mathematical and science should just be taught in science. And those things will not allow children to have a healthy questioning much later. So combine these topics so that they have a flavor of, especially bring life to whatever we talk about, have a relevance in their daily experience, be it maths, be it science, anything. So when they are connected to it, then it is all the more enriching for them. So either they have to see it or they would have felt it already. So can we talk about those things? And this next thing is, I've always loved this person, Janus Korchak. So he was a person who lived during the Second World War, during Hitler's time, and he was a Jew, I guess. And so he had written a book called Loving Every Child. And that book is a brilliant one. It's a very simple book, not hard to read. It is something I got the book more to look at what is father? What is what is to be a father? That's what I was looking at when I was having my baby. When my daughter Nila was born, around that time I got this book. So here in this book, he tells that the children teaches you to be a good teacher, and that just struck with me. So we have to love every child, and it is the child's right to be loved. It is every child's right to be loved, be it whatever they bring to the classroom. It could be just like what Pranav was asking. It could be class management, any nuisance in the class. Everything is possible. But can we really look at every child in a new lens every day? Because the children are coming with a lot of love for us. They are like having abundance of love, which we couldn't actually imagine about it. Yeah. And when we actually, I really want to emphasize on that point, loving every child. Because when we don't engage something positively and we sort of have an opinion about somebody, some child in the classroom, slowly without even be verbally saying anything, it percolates to the other children also. Suddenly, they all sort of take the child for granted and take the child for a ride, which would only make our opinion a true thing at the end of the day. So, as much as possible, don't box any children, don't brand any child, and that way we can allow to forgive ourselves for branding some children in that moment. Can we just not do that at all and remember that forever, whenever we are in the classroom or outside? Next
So
is
on that context, so on this context, and there, you know, there's a lot of prevalent usage of ideas like fast learners, slow learners, and things of that nature. The one thing which is used as a reason why that is so is connecting to your earlier point of, if I classify it as fast learners and slow learners, then I will be able to give them a certain kind of difficulty, which is making them which is ensuring they are not sitting inside their comfort level. But in the process of classifying as fast and slow learners, we are also labeling the children in some way. I mean, we can understand why that labeling might be used, but it's labeling nevertheless. The reason why the labeling is used is because the fast learners, I can give them a challenge level, which will challenge them truly with this. So it is sort of seen as a compassionate thing to do, but it sometimes works the other way, isn't it? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it is definitely, I would say it's some of the things like, even like dyslexia or anything else, children have enormous capacity to cope and work with that. The thing is, when we box them, when we say something, then it starts recurring quite often. And when that happens, like if we know someone has a certain condition, and if that is for us to hold it in the mind and work in a way that it's compassionate for them. Even it cannot come across as if like, oh, I know, and then I can't question something very difficult for them and put in a spot. I don't know if that itself is very helpful for them. So can we have that in our mind and consciously allow someone else to also have the class without knowing these things? And what would they do? And how would the child respond to that? Is the child feeling intimidated or not? That is something which we can observe and see. All these, I think, as a learning difficulty thing, it's probably quite clear, Ramesh. But the thing is, say someone is having a nature of gossiping and not coming directly to the teacher or directly to the other student and gossiping in different fashions. The thing is, when that happens continuously, then slowly what happens is in the class we keep saying, oh, a history is getting repeated. And oh, I know this boy, I know this girl, they have a history behind. What happens is it is slowly setting in stone. It's children are not like that. they are like, I heard from someone saying that they are like flowing water, and they change every day. We should allow it more like it should be so forgiving that they can change. They can do anything the previous day and come back to the next day and see that everyone in the class is expecting me not to be the same old boy. And that is so much enormous. It has an enormous effect on them to become better. And only if we really believe it. So this could happen to anything, like in our school also. Say, if I have a tough time with a boy or a girl, and I can't really get away with that at all. Whatever we say, the moment the child is in front of me, I don't know. I'm getting upset. But my responsibility should be to go and tell another teacher that, okay, this boy or this girl uh, definitely need everything in the classroom, but I'm not able to do it. Can you be in touch with him and then ensure that he is in touch with what is happening and all the needs to be taken care? It is your responsibility. But while I'm conveying that to him, can I be conscious not to talk about the history of what he has done so much? Because when he is not aware of the history, he can all the more help that child, because that history is what bothering me from having a good relationship with that boy or girl. So how do I unlearn my history? Can we not brand? Can we not create history? And as we know, history is written by from one perspective. And the history, what I believe of that child is my history. It is not the child's history. Can we also be aware about that? If I ask about the same incident to that child, he would have a different perspective of the whole thing. But just that my history or my opinion is slowly becoming my fact. Am I becoming aware of that and not allow my opinion to become a fact about any child? Yeah, that is something is quite important. And as a teacher, uh, it's some of the times we feel like as if uh, we have to do the knowledge transfer. I'm sure none of us could actually better something like Khan Academy, but because Khan Academy does not do any mistake while explaining, it can do many times, 1,000 times with the same emotion, which we can't do. But what we can do is, from my experiences and my exposures, I can give something valuable to the child. So, can we consciously, as teachers, read books outside our curriculum? Because that's what is going to shape them up. That's where you are going to expose to the children who the person are in front of them. Who are you actually? They will learn much more from who am I than what I teach them. So that is more important. And so we should share as much as possible a lot of personal stories, and that will also shape them. And in that journey of sharing with them, they are giving us an opportunity to shape ourselves. And yeah, I think we should be grateful for being teachers, because knowingly or unknowingly, there are hundreds of children who want to become like us. So, are we worthy of that imitation? That's something which we need to keep asking ourselves. Yeah. Thanks.
It's very nice. Are we worthy of those imitations? I'm going to carry that. Yeah, it's a very nice, very deeply put. Senthil, on the wow moments, the first point you mentioned, you want to spend a little more time on that. How, creating those wow moments for children, where they, they're able to look at something, and then when they come to an answer and they say, wow. I mean, the level of stickiness when the wow moment happens in the mind of a child is tremendously higher than when they are passive receivers of a certain knowledge. So can you spend 2 minutes if you have the time? I don't know how much.
No, I think it's, I also like, when I attend some of the pedagogical trainings or other things, there is this constant thing about you should not reward a child or reprimand a child. It's something which keeps coming. Like, oh, what is it? What is reward? Is reward the same as when I was, say, I'm sort of teaching just a subtraction for a child who don't want to engage at all because of the child's internalizing of either the child would not learn or something like that from the neighborhood or whatsoever. And then suddenly here we are in the class and then we are teaching subtracting. So there are 10 pebbles in the hand, and then I take out, I give 4 to her and then ask how much do I have. And then she would start counting slowly. And at some point she would not want to count at all. And then suddenly she's not even looking at the pebbles anymore. She's looking just with her fingers and then quickly getting something. And when I say, yeah, just that, yes, that small sound only she can hear, that itself is. And why I say this sort of an acknowledgement from the teacher is expected is, I know I'm setting a mark for the child to reach. And the moment the child reaches there, child feels wow. And sometimes the child may not be aware of the wow moment, but she has already reached there. In that moment, I think as a teacher, you should be responsible enough to say, yeah, can you be aware that you have reached some moment where you've been struggling so far? And that itself is enough. I don't think I was confusing that with giving a reward for the child. It's not a reward. It's like, say, we were playing a game where 2 people stand opposite to each other, and the child in front will have to keep a twig. I don't know if you can see the pen. So keep a twig like this, and then count 1, 2, 3, and this twig has to be dropped. And this hand should go in a fast motion almost down and catch the twig. And that's a game which we have been playing in the class, in physical education class, and I was observing that class. And he was a boy who didn't actually catch in the first moment, but he was trying and putting all the efforts to keep catching. That suddenly he is not aware that the whole class is watching me, I'm dropping continuously. No, he's just in the moment that he forgot when he dropped, but he's ready for the next catch. He is standing there, catch after catch after catch, but he is missing continuously. But something in his mind tells him that you will catch the next time. And the next time is not so sure when will that happen. But even as he is leaving, he's just touching once the stick. That itself is a great wow moment for him. Yeah, I touched. Next time I'm going to catch it. And the boy shut the noise about all the other children looking at him. He's failing. He's not worried. Can we create such a safe space? Can we create such a persevering moment? Can we, even after the failures, he didn't catch once, but still he had a wow moment. It's not that everyone should catch and then get the wow moment, but in their learning process itself, can they get it? Which can make them to stay longer. That is very important, I guess.
Right. Yeah. No, the way you're saying is, it makes me feel like, the Khan Academy example is also very interesting. It makes one feel like that particular subject matter, whether it is mathematics or history, is important, but it's sort of incidental. Because, one of the things we keep hearing all the time is saying that 20 years from now, whatever we are training for, those jobs are not even going to be there. Okay, and we know it. And we know it is not going to, because we just have to go back in history and take a look at it. What we learned 20 years back, we might not be applying it today. I mean, I learned it 30 years back, I'm much older. But whatever we learned might not be used at all today. So from the way Senthil is progressing with that, is like saying, let's imagine a child where we set the objective as saying, not as she should know how to do algebra and simultaneous equation and trigonometry and everything else. Instead, if I set the parameters as saying, I want a child who can truly question things which are going on and have the why embedded in them, so that they have a curious mind? Can I create a child who will be very, very optimistic and hopeful about the things which about themselves and have a good self-image about themselves and also about the world around them? Can I create a child who's socially aware, who's able to understand what is going on in society and have that certain amount of self-awareness? Can I have a child who's compassionate? If I can achieve those four, the math education which I taught, that's okay. Those are a bunch of tools they will use in their life, but I've created a real, a gentle, compassionate, curious human being. And for all of that, as a teacher, we have to be that. I mean, if you're not in all those four things, then we can't create things which we are not. I think that's sort of the way I picked up from what you're saying, Senthil, is like that. It's like basically getting the role that learning, you're saying, is, I know all of you can't, not all of you can understand Tamil. The two words are very beautiful in Tamil, which is katral and karpittal, which Senthil was talking to me about yesterday. Katral is learning, karpittal is teaching. The learning is intrinsic in a child, whereas teaching is what we are providing to a child. But if we provide the teaching in a way that the learning gets suppressed, but knowledge comes and fills that void, it will be a travesty. It's a very sad state of affairs. If the teaching is going to reduce the learning, create a void, and fill it up with whatever is called knowledge. Instead, if it can actually catalyze the learning process by acting as, a little ladder when the child is trying it hard to climb, a little bottle of water when she's trying to go through a desert, or a small little bridge when she's crossing a puddle or a lake, then teaching really becomes a catalyst rather than, and all of that with the end goal of those four things. I think that might be a way to think about. I don't know. I'm just rambling along, so to speak, but I'm just reflecting on what Senthil said, and the way I'm understanding it is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, super.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And
Thank you, Senthil and Ramesh, for graciously conducting this 1 hour webinar session. And thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day ahead.